In Pursuit of Truth Theatre presents.
Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth Theatre. I am your host, Sir Patrick Mack of Maplethorpe. We enter our 33rd day of what has turned out to be an incredibly intense standoff. Oh my. It appears that neither side is willing to budge an inch.
Just move, will ya? You move! Oh, just move! You move! Oh, move! You move! Move! You move!
Well, you and I can move, so let's get on down the road. And let's start over here with Representative Dan Crenshaw. I think this is probably the important story of the day. And the reason why we're doing this first is because if you have some liberal friends that you want to red pill and talk about this shutdown, you can start with this video. They don't have to watch my whole video. They can just listen to this right here. And this is very, very important. So listen up. Big deal that never got reported. Last week, House GOP voted to pay federal employees their first paycheck of 2019 despite shutdown. Only 6 Dems voted with us. It failed. Dem priority is not paying workers or opening government. It is opposing Trump. And the link takes you to the votes. But I'm going to take you to this first, because this is what it is, and this is from appropriations.house.gov. It is this HJ Resolution 28, and this is a press release from the Congress. Chairwoman Lowy, floor statement on HJ Resolution 28, continuing resolution through February 28th. And we're not going to go through this whole speech here because it's kind of just a little bit of, just typical rhetoric. But here it says at the bottom, this continuing resolution would provide an additional option for President Trump and Senate Republicans to take yes for an answer and end the shutdown. It would reopen government through February 28th, providing time for Congress to come to a full-year agreement without further jeopardizing vital services or the pay of federal employees. The order of business should be simple: reopen the government, pay federal employees, and then negotiate on border security and immigration policy. It is long past time for my colleagues across the aisle and across the Capitol to come to their senses, and end this shutdown. Okay, so this seems to be the crux of the matter, right? It looks like this shutdown has no end in sight. And President Trump is essentially saying, I'm not opening this up if we're not going to negotiate this border security, whether you want to call it a wall or whatever you want to call it. But for some reason, he is conspicuously using this as his sticking point. And he's dug his heels in, and we've talked at great length about that. Now, the Democrats are saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and talk about border security, but open the government first. And that's where our standoff seems to lie. And here's the link that Representative Crenshaw sent us. And I'll tell you what, Texas, you knocked it out of the park with this guy. But you can see on the top left here, Democratic and Republican votes. And here in the center are the yay votes. So only 6 Democratic votes. Ended up to a total of 195 votes for yays. And here are all your yays here. But let's talk a little bit about the nays. Oh, I see Aguilar, Ocasio-Cortez, Panetta, Jackson, Lee, Ted Lieu, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Napolitano. I think you're starting to see the point. So, ladies and gentlemen, regardless of your political affiliation, whether you have one or not, here it is right here. Okay. So to our unhinged liberal left friends, I don't know what else to tell you. You want to talk about working? Let's talk about working. Put up or shut up. There it is. This is your proposal. Let's get it done.
You want me to show you tough? I'll show you tough. Hey! 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 Hey!
All right, well, look, it doesn't look like either side is going to budge on this, and we're pretty far from being able to meet in the middle. Now, there are centrists on either side of the aisle that are trying to make this happen, but realistically, I'm not so sure. I think this is going to keep on going. President Trump, like I said, has dug his heels in on this issue, and he seems to be getting a lot of support. I think that Democrats are really hoping that this will turn into some sort of embarrassment for him, and it just doesn't seem to be the case. And, of course, judging by what we've seen with those vote results right there, we can see why. Now, in relation to this, we have the State of the Union speech coming up, and it appears that Republicans have maintained this is going to stay on the 29th. It remains to be seen where this is going to be delivered. Now, Nancy Pelosi has not technically uninvited President Trump, so it still could happen this way. I suppose you could always have the Senate invite President Trump to speak there, but it was really the walkthrough that got canceled, right? And so they've lost a lot of time on this, but they can still pull this off. And of course, Democrats are saying that this is because of security. But of course, if the president can go to Iraq, he can certainly make a speech in Washington. And so this clearly is a case of the Democrats wanting to keep POTUS away from speaking to the American people about what's really, really going on, because they know he shines in that public spotlight. They know how well he does on camera as opposed to how well, say, a Pelosi or Chuck Schumer does. God forbid, an Ocasio-Cortez, right? Every time you turn the spotlight on these people, it's a fail fest, right? So it remains to be seen, but I tend to think this will get ironed out. I'm not so sure that we are going to see the government open up again. It very well may go another month paycheck for a lot of these federal employees. But in relation to this, if you remember, about a month or so ago, we had the CenturyLink outages, and they were kind of all over. It looked like a lot on the West Coast, but there were a lot of these outages from CenturyLink providers, and then of course Comcast went down. Facebook has had their problems, and now we have WhatsApp also. And let me see if I can find it here. There it is. Yeah, WhatsApp down. Messaging app stops working worldwide. This is a pretty big messaging app. 1.5 billion users. Now, keep in mind, this is Facebook owned. I like this tweet from Anshu Moore, who says 500 people in India have already died because WhatsApp is down and they couldn't forward a chain message to 10 people. All right, so it looks like it's already back up again, but once again, we've got a Facebook-owned property that is that had a massive outage. Who knows if this was a purge or not? But keep in mind, the president has this presidential alert that they've been testing, and it seems that they've continued to test. And as they test, we get all these different shutdowns from messaging apps and whether it's internet providers or whatnot. This seems to be going on over the last couple months. Could the Q team or the presidential team be preparing some sort of technical or emergency alert? Hard to really know. President Trump has toyed around with the idea that he could always call a national emergency. Now, for those people who really want to dive right into that, I think that's a really bad idea. I think martial law and calling emergencies and things like that, those are scary things, and it may happen, but I think that is definitely not the first case scenario that we want to reach for ever. People get hurt that way, and that's a great way for big government to get even bigger. But it does seem like the Democrats, big tech, seems to be wanting to make sure that this State of the Union speech does not happen. Could a presidential emergency alert or something like that be used to go around that? It remains to be seen, but we're going to see in the next few days. Now we're on the conservativereview.com. Levin, find the criminals in Mueller's office. This is an article from Jordan Schachtel. Levin TV host Mark Levin began his radio show Friday evening reacting to BuzzFeed's latest report that Michael Cohen claimed he was told by President Trump to lie to Congress. People want you to think that this is Watergate, Levin began. There's only one problem with this, folks, he continued. We don't have any information. Levin called for an investigation into the source of the continuing Department of Justice leaks. If, in fact, either of these so-called reporters for BuzzFeed saw documents, now where would those documents be, he added. They would be with Mr. Mueller and his people in Mueller's office. Mr. Whitaker and Mr. Rosenstein and the director of the FBI must now trigger a leak investigation. Find who the criminals are in Mr. Mueller's office. If it's not Mr. Mueller himself, Levin continued. Okay, so I'm going to let you listen to a little bit of this because I think it's really crucial and it's important to hear the words actually coming out of his mouth, but keep this in mind. This is the same BuzzFeed that was propagating the Steele dossier. BuzzFeed is trash, absolute trash. And the fact of the matter that BuzzFeed has anything at all at this point means that somebody leaked the investigation. Let him explain.
Wonderful Friday. If in fact BuzzFeed, remember this is the same BuzzFeed that put out the dossier. Remember that? Oh yeah, the same BuzzFeed that put out a transcription of the dossier. That held up pretty well, didn't it? Now, stick with me here. I'm going to address this in a different way. If, in fact, either of these so-called reporters for BuzzFeed saw documents, one claims he did, and had other information read to him, well, where would those documents be, ladies and gentlemen? They would be with Mr. Mueller and his people in Mueller's office. Why am I the only one in the whole country to bring this up? Now, if you are a U.S. attorney and you or your people are leaking investigative information to the media, as the FBI has now found out, this is a crime. Right, Mr. McCabe? Right, Mr. Baker? Right, Mr. Stroke? Right, Miss Page? Now, I'm calling on the Acting Attorney General of the United States, Mr. Whitaker, and the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Mr. Rosenstein, to start a leak investigation in Mr. Mueller's office, because I've been watching and listening to the press all afternoon long, which is very painful, I might add. It's like liberal porn. They're just out there doing what they do. So I'm calling on the United States Justice Department to immediately open a leak investigation in Mr. Mueller's office, because if this BuzzFeed story is true, a bombshell, then we have criminal violations coming out of Mr. Mueller's office. Was it Mr. Mueller? Was it Mr. Weissman? Who was it in Mr. Mueller's office who leaked to BuzzFeed? Who showed them documents? Who read documents to them? 2 investigators, it says. Well, the FBI agent. But who else would have this information, ladies and gentlemen? Mr. Producer, who else would have this information? Nobody. So these 2 reporters, they just fingered the Mueller office, his investigators. One more time, so the backbenchers can repeat it on Monday and say, see what I said? I am saying that Mr. Whitaker and Mr. Rosenstein and the director of the FBI must now trigger a leak investigation, find who the criminals are in Mr. Mueller's office. It's not Mr. Mueller himself.
Okay, so like Mr. Levin said, by the very fact that someone has this information at all, anybody over there at BuzzFeed, the fact that they got it means that somebody would have had to give it to them. Somebody on the Mueller team leaked. Who could it have been? Not really sure. But many of the mediaites decided to go ahead and double down on this story before checking it. And that, of course, is very, very dangerous. Now, one person who was also all about this was Adam Schiff. The allegation that the President of the United States may have suborned perjury before our committee in an effort to curtail the investigation and cover up his business dealings with Russia is amongst the most serious to date. We will do what's necessary to find out if it's true. And of course, that's in reaction to BuzzFeed's tweet. President Trump personally directed his longtime attorney, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress. So what's everybody got to hide? Why is this coming out now? Why is this all of a sudden this crazy allegation coming out right before the State of the Union speech? It seems like a very, very desperate attempt to change the narrative. Although this time it doesn't seem to be working very well. This lost a lot of steam yesterday. Well, the POTUS took to Twitter talking about the testimony of one of our said leakers. Former FBI top lawyer James Baker just admitted involvement in FISA warrant and further admitted there were irregularities in the way the Russia probe was handled. They relied heavily on the unverified Trump dossier paid for by the DNC and Clinton campaign and funded through a big, crooked Hillary law firm represented by her lawyer Michael Sussman. Do you believe this? Who worked Baker hard and gave him Oppo research for a Russia probe. This meeting now exposed is the subject of Senate inquiries and much more. An unconstitutional hoax. Indeed. Now, I thought this was really, really interesting. We know that Baker has given testimony, and of course, whatever Baker must have known, we must imagine that Andrew McCabe and James Comey would have known also. How much has Baker given? I have a feeling it was probably a lot more than what is being led on. Now, I thought this was an interesting line here in this second tweet, the one on top here, where he says, you worked Baker hard and gave him Oppo research for a Russia probe. Now, I don't know if this is popular in the United States, But out in Asia, Oppo is a rather popular Chinese phone brand. I would liken it to the Apple products. They're very similar in their look. The tablets and the phones, they all have the same look. As a matter of fact, I think they look like copycats. They're a little bit more affordable, of course, and they don't work as well. They're kind of flimsy, but it has that same sort of look. Now, back in 2017, Indian retail sector wrote this article from August 2017. Chinese phones, Vivo, Oppo, Xiaomi, and Xiaomi stealing your data. And I'm not going to go through this article too much because it's translated and it's a little bit poor, but we'll parse a little bit. But essentially, India was complaining essentially about what we're kind of talking about too. All these Chinese phones were getting in the country and stealing data. And of course, it seems to be okay to spy on your own country, but not okay to spy on others. Now, in China, themselves, they don't use a lot of the products that we know to be spying on us, such as Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, and Chrome. And of course, Google owns Chrome. Facebook owns WhatsApp. We just talked about the WhatsApp outage. And China has banned all this. Now, they use Baidu as their main search engine. And instead of WhatsApp, I noticed that a lot of them use WeChat out there. As a matter of fact, I think it says, yeah, here we go. China banned these, claiming that these software companies are supporting their parent company and stealing critical data about China and Chinese users. China has developed its own services, which we already mentioned: Baidu, WeChat, UC Browser. Chinese government is notorious for spying its citizens. In this preview, Indian government concerns are understandable. Okay, so essentially we see that China was spying on lots of people, and India was raising a red flag. Now, I don't want to go way into this because we kind of already understand that, but I thought it was very interesting that President Trump capitalized Oppo. Was this maybe one of the companies involved in some of the spying, particularly in some of the information that was being given to or sold by the DNC? Not really sure, but I found it interesting that President Trump had capitalized Oppo and it spelled opposition research that way. Now, I want to take you over to this document here. It looks like it was filed yesterday. The United States of America versus BackPage.com. Oh boy. Now look, if you don't remember BackPage.com, they made news last year in April 2018 when the government came and seized all their assets. BackPage.com being an advertising website, sort of like a classified advertising website, kind of along the lines of a Craigslist, if you will. They were advertising all kinds of services. Unfortunately, it looks like one of the services that they were offering was human trafficking. Now, a bunch of people got popped in southern Florida, and I mentioned that way back in my video called Connecting a Crisis. You can check that out, In Pursuit of Truth, Connecting a Crisis, talking about human trafficking between Haiti and southern Florida. But it looks like now this is coming from Arizona. Now, I'm not going to read off the first page here. I want to show you some of the things that were seized here. Notice is hereby given that on October 18, 2018, in the case of U.S. versus Backpage.com, court case number, I'll let you read that for yourself, the United States District Court for the District of Arizona entered an order condemning and forfeiting the following property to the United States of America. And it's some big property, nearly $4 million here, $3.7 million in funds seized from Bank of America account in the name of Davis Wright Tremaine LLP. The estimated value is $6.25 million. Now, we just got this here, but for you Anons who want to do some digging, I highly suggest checking out some of these names. $5 million in funds seized from the Bank of the West account in the name of Rusing Lopez and Lizardi PLLC. $64 million in bank funds seized from JP Morgan Chase bank account in the name of Walters Law Group. $10 million in funds seized from Citi private bank account in the name of Aiken Gump Strauss Hauer and Feld LLP. $77,000 in bank funds seized from Citibank account in the name of Prince Lobel Thai LLP. $87,000 in bank funds seized from U.S. Bank Private Client Reserve account in the name of Thompson Coburn LLP. Funds in U.S. Bank account in the name of Perkins Coie. Yes, the same Perkins Coie LLP whose Mark Elias hired Fusion GPS to begin the Steele dossier. Also, likely the very same Perkins Coie LLP who was funding the failed Michael Avenatti law firm in order for them to continue through pushing the Stormy Daniels narrative. So, is this possible? Stormy Daniels. Likely Nexium. Nexium, human trafficking, Backpage.com. Backpage.com. Perkins Coie LLP, Michael Avenatti. Michael Avenatti, who we know has been funded by the Saudis, in particular, Prince Turki bin Faisal bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. You could just call him Gary for short. Saudi Arabia, human trafficking, wonderland. Hillary Clinton, Perkins Coie LLP, Fusion GPS. Ladies and gentlemen, this is much, much bigger than FISA. So I'm very interested to see how this plays out. Now, like I said earlier, a lot of the original arrests were coming out of Florida, but the actual founder's home was in Arizona and his house was raided. So maybe we are finally starting to see the fruits of some of that labor. Let's hope so, but it certainly is a promising sign, and as many of you already know, it seems more and more apparent every day that all roads lead back to Clinton. I'm going to leave you on that note today. I am working on some other side projects for you that I'm really excited about. I hope you guys are going to dig it. I'm going to keep bringing you some quick burns too, and I'll keep bringing you the headlines, but using some of this time when Q is not posting to work on some other projects, and I really do hope you're going to dig them. All right, kids, that's all I got for you today. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. If you're new to my channel, welcome to you. Please keep in mind that from time to time, you will get unclicked and unnotified and unsubscribed. You think it may not happen to you? It will. It will. All right, all my links are down below to my Gab, my BitChute, my Brighteon.com, and of course, I pop my mouth over here on Twitter a lot at IPOT1776. That's at IPOT1776. All those links are down below. My email is down below if you want to send me some interesting story. Please, guys, I don't do DMs on Twitter. I get too many of them and I kind of can't keep track of who's who. So please, if you've got something you want to send to me, please email it to me, and that is down below also. And if you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon link is down below also. All those links are down below, as well as the things that we discussed today down below in the video description. Thanks so much for listening today, guys. This is Sir Patrick Mack, and until next time, stay free.